This week on the BackTable podcast.
A simple analogy that just kind of a visual that I think is a good reference point for physicians, especially as they get further along, in their careers. And I talk about it with my children, and I say, an iceberg, I said, a very small portion of the iceberg actually sticks out above the water that you can see. I said, but they're very stable. It's really hard to tip over a big iceberg because there's so much underwater. And I said, that's the way that I want my clients' financial situations to be. That's the way I want our financial situation to be. Wealth can pop out in certain spots, but if all the wealth is on the surface for everybody to see and there's nothing below it, it's a very unstable situation. And that tends to lead to stress and anxiety, burnout. And so I think that's kind of a good visual for people if they're looking at their own situation. What's your iceberg look like?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to BackTable ENT podcast, where we discuss all things ENT and more. We bring you the best and the brightest in our field, but for today, I have invited a non-physician, but an expert in financial well-being, specifically for physicians. As always, our goal is for you to take something from our show to your practice. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Wei. I'm excited to guest host this episode. I'm a pediatric ENT who's taken a pause from clinical practice due to recent medical disability, but I've been passionate about physician well-being for over a decade. So with me today, I'm so excited to invite Mr. Marshall Gifford. Hi, Marshall. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not common that we have a non-ENT on this podcast channel, but do you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself? I know you're a financial advisor, obviously, kind of why you are doing that and just your business.
Sure. I live in Fort Myers, Florida with my wife and my sophomore in high school, and I've got two kids that are still up in Minnesota, which is where I actually built the business over the last 29 years. Yeah, I had a goal back when I started of building a financial consulting business, and I knew in my hometown that, the physicians all lived up on a specific hill with the implement dealer, and I thought, hey, if I'm going to build a business, it seems like physicians make some money, and so if you're going to be a financial advisor, you got to work with some people that actually have a means to do something, with the advice they're recommending. And I happen to be near the University of Minnesota Medical School and Dental School, where I do a lot of work as well. And so I launched a business basically working with medical and dental students, which made no money, with a vision of growing it into something down the road as these people matured and eventually had bigger concerns. But I had very few expenses coming out, so I made very little to begin with and have just grown with my clients. And it's just been a really fun ride to see people go from a lot of student loan debt to doing really, really well and being financially independent. So it's a little bit of history, yeah.
But of course, as you know, I say it respectfully, right? Financial advisors are a dime a dozen. They're all out there. And I'm excited for our audience to know why I specifically wanted to invite you to our show today, because we're going to focus on financial well-being for physicians. Why do docs make bad choices? But really, in a very compassionate way, we're going to explore what we're both passionate about from different perspectives, because financial well-being is a big subject that is relevant for me, for all my colleagues. But back to what you said about Minnesota, I think our audience may be interested to know how we got connected, because I met you, in 1997?
1997 at the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, at the Mayo Clinic. I know you do a lot of work with trainees, residents, and fellows. So do you want to just share a little bit about, I don't have really strong memories, right? I think I met you through some educational events, perhaps?
I've always had a passion for helping people early in their career. And that's because Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And if you can help people understand money at an early age, the impact of it is more meaningful than at a later age. And
of course,
as a physician, there's certain windows of opportunity where they can choose to make, good or bad financial decisions.
Yes.
And being there during, I think, the most important transition, which is from residency to practice, is critically important to get them set on the right track. And so I think the more people we can reach out to before they've already got their lifestyle set, the more impact, that we can have.
You said that word, that lifestyle, right?
Right.
So we're definitely going to explore that. I'm kind of curious if you have a personal or professional story about just exploring a little more why you focus on physicians and dentists. I mean, you mentioned a little bit about just naturally, organically, the exposure to them. What's it like for you growing up, with money, or I don't know, how did you learn about management of money or impact of financial decisions?
I saw my parents, and they were good money role models for me. I think that's something as a financial advisor that people need to understand, about their clients is, what was their upbringing like, with money. And both my parents were business owners. My dad ran an insurance agency. My mom had an antique store in rural Iowa.
Wow.
For perspective, I grew up in 1,500 people in my town, had 56 people in my high school class.
What? 56?
Yeah. And the tallest buildings were the Catholic Church and the co-op.
Wow.
So for those of you from rural America, you'll understand exactly, the kind of town I'm talking about. Being business owners, my parents were able to attend all of the events, that I was at as a kid and made their own decisions about those things. And I remember them talking about funding. My dad funded like a KEO plan, which they really don't set up much, anymore. And my mom invested in stocks because her grandfather was a finance professor at the University of Dubuque for a long time. And I saw we didn't make a lot of money, but we were able to do things, that maybe other families weren't. But I really didn't understand how money worked. And
I don't think most of us do.
Right.
We think, we earn it, we spend it. But This is where your expertise is so helpful for physicians.
And a concept that I want people to understand with money, it's the compound interest is amazing. And I said earlier, Einstein said it was the eighth wonder of the world. It allows you to earn money on money and allows you to stop trading your hours for dollars because your money will make money regardless of if you're working. And so...
Okay, that's a concept that a lot of us may not understand.
Yeah.
Say that again. So how do you compound? How does money compound?
For example, the compounding that most people are aware of now is the wrong kind. It's the compound interest on debt.
Okay.
With student loans and mortgages and those kinds of things.
Yes.
And if you've got a $500,000 mortgage at 5% interest, that's $25,000 of interest that you're paying on that loan.
Right.
The same if you have $500,000 invested and it makes 5%, you made $25,000.
So sounds like we want compounding based on solid savings. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I know you're passionate about educating people about debt management, and we'll explore that in a little bit.
Compound interest is hugely important. And the earlier you start, it makes an enormous difference for people in the long run.
So, since our audience, are savvy, and nowadays podcasts are really amazing, right? You can listen to a variety of them. I'm personally aware, and I know you are, of a podcast called White Coat Investors. I would like to ask you to comment for our audience the difference between our intent today and what's different than some of the content that people may find on these wealth management podcasts.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think White Coat Investor does a great job getting information out to physicians. Their information is typically is relevant, it's impactful. The difference between, what we're going to talk about today and say what my role is, for clients might be similar to a physician and a patient. I find if you really want to get quality medical advice, you don't get it from a blog or an online site. You make an appointment with your doctor and you go in, and it's best done in in a patient-doctor relationship. And I think for complex things, for holding people accountable, and that's really what a financial advisor does a lot, is it's not just helping understand a situation, it's actually helping people take action.
Yes, I can say that from a personal experience, 100%.
Right. And so I think complex financial discussions, the emotions of money, the backgrounds, really getting to know someone, it's best done with a financial advisor-client relationship where we learn to know that person over years and understand their emotional attachments to money, what things stress them out, what things don't, what their goals are, what their dreams are. Do they want to leave a legacy or not? How do they envision retirement? Do they want to take their kids and grandkids on cruises? Do they not? And you can't get that from a blog. So I think, a White Coat Investor does a great job of getting information out. But as far as actually applying it individually to people and in alignment with their financial goals, I think that's hard to do without someone being an intermediary there.
Yeah, I really like how you share that. Frankly, I know I've recently launched a coaching business, right? My observation, personal experience is exactly that. We have incredible physicians, surgeons, people in the healthcare field. Everybody knows burnout is, just keeps climbing. The fact is, cognitively, you can hear content and information that makes sense. Everyone's fried, busy. I find that in general, humans don't typically gravitate towards something that they haven't mapped. It's just uncomfortable for them, or they don't have enough information. And that's not everyone, right? I certainly have known colleagues who are very savvy, But I can tell you, my husband and I, we're blessed, right? If we didn't have experts helping to guide us, I was so busy. Why would I let me make an appointment with myself on Friday afternoon to manage my wealth? I mean,
Right.
to understand. And yeah, definitely. Hey, can you tell me a little bit about what percentage of your clients are doctors and what about their practice settings? I'm curious about that.
Doctors, if we're including, a big part of what we do is also in the dental space. So we've got a large operation that's with orthodontists and endodontists and oral surgeons and ENT doctors. About 90% of our practice is in the medical space.
Okay, but are they in private practice, academics? I was wondering if there's a difference, primary care specialists.
There's not a lot that are in academics, but there are some, that are in academics. We've got a lot in private practice, but then a lot in large groups, because we've seen the consolidation, in medicine where it just with scale. So we don't see a lot of the individual ENT doc or solo practitioners anymore. And so that was the case 25, 30 years ago more when I started, but not so much now. So I've seen a significant erosion in the number of physicians that are self-employed or parts of independent groups, and now they're employees. And I think that's part of the issue that we're seeing now, and some of the burnout is groups are not physician run
Right.
anymore. And money is a driving factor in that, and they're expected to produce more RVUs and less time, and that impacts kind of their ability.
Wait a second. You're speaking my language now. No, not the RVUs. They got to you too, Marshall.
Right,
Come on.
right. And so the bigger the group, I think they kind of feel like they're losing the ability to influence the direction of the practice like they used to. And I think that's been stressful for a lot of physicians.
Isn't that fascinating? I mean, I would think that all the more reason physicians should work with a financial advisor, right? I mean, whether you educate them as a group together or when individually to take action, because everybody's situation obviously has some variation, but
Right.
Everybody deserves protection. Oh, one question. I'm very curious about, have you observed any sex differences? My daughter taught me the difference between sex and gender. Are more of your clients male versus female, or pretty much the same? Because I'm curious about just...
Yeah, it's a pretty even split, I would say. In fact, I think now, I know at dental school, and I think medical as well, there's more females in training than there are males right now, which absolutely was not the case, 30 years ago.
Yes, but unfortunately, we are seeing there's still a gap in surgical subspecialties, right? Like maybe in primary care, pediatrics.
Correct.
You're right. You're absolutely right about the 50 and over % of medical students being female. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. You know me. We recently reconnected. I was really excited to connect with you again. And I've been working a lot in increasing awareness and in hopefully inspiring action about increasing well-being, right? I really believe in psychological safety for physicians, and that comes in all forms. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about the intersection between a physician experience or risk of burnout and their financial reality, right? So let's kind of talk about that. Can I ask you, and this is generally, after working over a couple decades with physicians, what are they sharing with you? What are their realities? Where have they made the bad choices and you're helping to get them back on track?
Fortunately, a lot of my long-term clients, I met them early enough where we hopefully avoided some of the pitfalls, that we see physicians run into. There's definitely that delayed gratification side of things. The psychology side of things, I tend to find that physicians that are financially stressed are more subject to feeling stressed at work as well.
Interesting.
For example, I was just talking with a specialist the other day, and he was referencing that they're talking about maybe 20% cuts, for Medicare yesterday for their specialty. And fortunately, this particular client of mine has significant margin in life, and so we'll probably need to back the savings down, but there's no backing the house down, moving the kids, that kind of stuff. And so I think that's where it gets real dangerous is if someone's not operating with financial margin in their life and there is a cut to reimbursements or compensation reduction, all of a sudden it's like they've living on everything. Where does that money go? And so we really stress when someone's coming out of residency to pretend that 20% of their paycheck they're not getting and use it to make extra debt payments, use it to save. But aside from being financially prudent, it builds margin, which reduces stress, which is a big deal.
Okay, this is excellent. Let's do this. I'm based on what you're saying. Let's go back to the beginning, right? Let me ask you, what is the average debt that your clients have by the end of training, whether it's residency or fellowship?
It varies depending on what school.
Of course. Is there a range or in general, average?
200 to 400,000.
400,000.
Again, this isn't relevant on the physician side, but on the dental side, a lot are paid residencies. And so we're seeing some people coming out with 500,000 or 600,000, maybe to be an orthodontist or something along those lines.
Oh my goodness, right? And
Yeah.
so this is something that I have to admit, if I look back at my educational journey or any part during my career, there was no formal curriculum on debt management,
Right.
right? And this is how sometimes if they didn't have great guidance, this is where you can make some bad decisions. It's just ridiculous to think about how to climb out of that. Let me ask this question. Are there one or two greatest risk factors that you would tell a physician or a dentist for financial challenges that increase their burnout? I mean, I know you've alluded to it. I want to talk a little bit about your debt. Let's just build on that. If you're owing 400,000, like what is happening and how I think about that versus maybe a disconnect to my new lifestyle when I finish training or how I get stuck in that place, right? Now I got to spend the rest of my life just crank and churn and get those RVUs so I can.
I think one mistake people make even as early as medical school, and particularly in residency, is not understanding the economics of the decisions that they're making.
Okay.
For example, you can't go out and take out $400,000 of student loans if your expected income is going to be $200,000. The math isn't going to work on that if they want to be able to pay that off in a reasonable period of time and have a nice lifestyle. There's just not enough money. You're going around there. So if you're going to take out $400,000 of student loans, I'd like to see an income at least equivalent to that, within the first couple of years of practice to allow for a decent lifestyle and a good debt elimination plan. We don't see this as much in medicine, and it's gotten a little bit weird now too with the public student loan forgiveness options and things which have been clarified lately, where some of these loans are actually getting, forgiven. But in general, it's taking out too much debt to then not understand where the end game is economically. And in medicine, there's significant ranges from primary care to neurosurgery to orthopedic surgery to emergency medicine to ENT. There's there's significant ranges of income, but yet the cost to get educated is the same.
That's a great point. I have to be honest. Yesterday, this year, because of the not practicing, but I'm passionate about students, I still teach at the med school. So yesterday, it was just so inspirational to be with the first year students, right? In the cadaver lab, teaching anatomy. But, for the last decade, as a advisor to helping those who are interested match into ENT, for example, I can tell you our training experience is encouraging, helping students pursue the field of their dreams. At no point do we talk about the ratio of the debt and the economics, right? Because you can understand in a theoretical, perfect world, you should choose to pursue the subspecialty or career that you're passionate about. But I guess what I'm hearing you say is not that it's the sole factor, but perhaps they also can benefit as early as in medical school when they're making that decision third year,
right,
to kind of look at that financial outlook and where they are.
Right.
Is that right?
Correct.
Wow. Boy, we should bring you into med schools all over. But then I don't know. Then everyone's going to be a surgeon. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Yeah. And you also referenced what are the other risk factors. And I think the biggest one that I see is physicians get out. We talked a little about delayed gratification.
Yes, I want to go there.
And they build their life, what kind of house they want and car they want and all those types of things before actually figuring out what's most important to them financially. And so the analogy that I like to use with my clients is envision like a 5-gallon glass container, and the picture I've got some 6-inch rocks, some pebbles, some sand and water. If I put in the big rocks first, sprinkle the pebbles in, the sand in, filters down around the pebbles and rocks and the water, everything fits fine. If I put in the water, followed by the sand, followed by the pebbles, followed the big rocks don't fit. And generally when you ask people in life, what are their life goals? What's most important to them? They don't say, I want to own a Tesla. I want to own $1 million home. They're like, well, I would like to be financially independent at a certain time. There's a lake home that I would like to purchase for our family. I'd like to get my student loans paid off in 10 years. Well, if those are your most important things along with maybe funding college, figure out what those cost first. Understand the cost of taxes, which is another thing a lot of people don't understand, because residency taxes are not practicing taxes because of the way the tax system works. For the more you make, the more you pay.
That's right.
And put those big rocks in first, and then back into the mortgage, back into the car with what's left over. And the freeing experience of knowing that you're going on vacation and college is taken care of for my kids. I'm doing well there. I'm paying off my student loans. I'm on track for retirement, and I've got money left in my pocket. Enjoy vacation. Spend the money as you want. If you don't know if you're on track for those things, spending the same dollar can be anxiety provoking without a plan and freeing with a plan. And so I think it's not aligning your goals with your money. And that's really what we try to help people do, is understand where they are, in their journey. And I always like to say a goal without a plan is just a wish. And I find a lot of physicians are wishing for things, but they're not actually taking the steps necessary to accomplish those. They know what they need to do, but they're not actually doing them.
That makes sense to me, right? The reason I invited you on this podcast, and the reason I truly believe this is still a huge gap, it's just that we don't have a standardized formal education, not just about any specialty, about physicians at large in the United States, right? Physicians, hardworking as they are, harder than ever. They just are kind of spend all their energy being competitive just to get into med school, competitive to get into residency. They're just grateful they matched, right? And then they train, and then it's this deferred, delay gratification. Then I finally made it. And I want to go back to talking about, well, why do we physicians, some of them make bad choices and pick the wrong rocks? I mean, based on that analogy, right?
Right.
The 12,000 square foot home and the Tesla, that may be the big rocks.
Right.
Right? Instead of the other big, we just have the wrong rocks, right?
Correct.
So, but I want to say this though, it may sound like I'm defending physicians, but I can speak for myself. No, I don't have a 12,000 square foot home. We lease, Mazdas. We're beyond blessed. But I will say this, well, for us at least, when you're well into like late 20s, 30s, you've given up holidays, you're on call, you're enduring trauma and stress, and there's like no time for life. And your friends who are not in healthcare, a lot of them, right? They're partying, right. They're traveling, they're doing all kinds of stuff. I have to admit, and then for the females in particular, right? More at risk for infertility, miscarriage. I got to tell you, I have learned, at 52, I can admit, I have very odd, sometimes, emotions associated with spending. The harder I worked, the more it was, hey, when I go on vacation, I deserve, right? Or this notion of I deserve because look how much I've suffered. I think my goal for the podcast is, we recognize you've suffered, but there's a way to suffer well without making these decisions that put you in the worst place, right? When you already start out with this massive debt.
Right. It's aligning your money with your goals. And that's the question. I mean, I never tell people don't spend money, but we will let them know if they've told us what their big rocks are and they're making decisions that are not going to allow them to accomplish those things. It's our responsibility, to let them know. And another question that I like to ask people is, how much do you enjoy your work? Because that influences burnout, that influences recommendations. If someone's inclined to work until 65 versus they want to make a bunch of money and retire at 50,
right? Those
are two completely different plans and different things that we need to focus on. And so one is kind of the working to live plan, and the other one is living to work. Which one do you want?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I also had learned, it's just people place value differently, right? Even in my own marriage, I rather spend more on vacation. My spouse may prefer to spend it on high-tech video audio equipment. Do you know what I mean? So I often find as adults too, it's not just the individual, right? So because if you're in a relationship, there's a family, there's a couple, there's also some reconciliation, right? I'm lucky that, Dave and I work together with the financial advisor. Every decision we make is a shared decision, including both of our perspectives. So awesome. Can I ask you, what are some success or even heartbreaking stories that you can share about generality, smart choices versus bad choices, and the impact of bad choices and their loved ones? Anything in general that
Yeah, I mean, that really gets into, we haven't touched upon much the risk management space.
Risk management. Tell us more.
That's where I see lack of making decisions can have a dramatic impact on the people that you love. Fortunately, we've had heartbreaking success stories more.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm happy to hear some examples, or can you be a little more concrete about that?
For example, I've got a couple of clients right now that are disabled. They're able to live life just fine, but due to neck issues or hand issues or low back issues, they're just dealing with chronic pain. Right.
Like me. Yeah.
And they've been able to exit their businesses or sell their businesses. And we had them on track to be financially independent in their mid-50s, and these things are happening in their early 50s. But with the addition of their significant disability insurance benefits, their retirements are actually far better than we ever planned them to be, because we don't actually need to touch their investments till they're 67 and their benefits stop, and they're going to get an indexed benefit, to that. So what would have made things really challenging for them, a loss of their income at 52, and they weren't going to be financially independent for 4 or 5 more years, has turned into a far better scenario than we ever thought, because they're actually going to continue to get a nice income until they're 67. Plus, they've already got the assets that we were planning on tapping, in their mid-50s. And it's nice to see someone, because it's emotional enough having to give up something that's been such a part of them.
Oh, I can relate to that. Yeah, talk about identity loss. Yep.
Let alone then have to take a pay cut and try to figure out what you're going to do and are you going to go back to work somewhere else? How does that work? And so, and I've seen the same, on the life insurance, side of things.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I was back in my office in Minneapolis, and I had a meeting with a client I've known for a long, long time, and she's got stage 4 cancer. Oh. And the point of the meeting was just to talk about what the world might look like, when she's not there. And unfortunately, I've had a number of those meetings, and there are tears shed, but to be able to have someone know that, go ahead and fight the cancer. Family's going to be fine, win or lose. You've done your job financially. Kids can stay in the schools. Family can keep the house. No one needs to go back to work. You're fine. Focus on what you need to focus on right now. You took care of the money side of things. And the tears that are shed, the hugs that are had, and that's very rewarding, and not the side of financial planning that people see. Really why I do this, I think that's where you make a huge impact. Accumulating wealth slowly is important, but protecting people in the event of something not going their way is really, really impactful.
Oh, Marshall, what you just said is really incredibly powerful. So I want to take a second and say that this is why I want you on the show, because I know your heart. I know you deeply care. They're not just your clients. I mean, you protect them like your family members. And that aligns with my passion and commitment, right? It's that we going through training and taking care of the world, right? The sick, the children, their families, everybody. We're not experts on how to protect ourselves, whether it's disability, litigation, right? Financial. And if you're lucky and you already have some of these experts that are almost like your professional coaches in all different domains, then great. But if you don't, we've been in denial that we're human too, right? And I am much more aware after going through my own disability, as you know, what it took to learn these lessons and insights. And in many ways, I see that we can save others or protect them on the front end, as you've alluded to throughout this podcast. So let me ask this way. Yes, ideally, everybody should have an incredible advisor and all these plans early in training. So what if one of our listeners, physicians, surgeons, what if they're at a bad place right now? I mean, is it too late to get back on track or get help?
I don't know if it's ever too late. The younger you are, the easier it is to get back on track. The older, a little bit harder it is, because you've just exhausted more of your working years, or you end up working a bit longer. But those are discussions. It's just, you got to figure out what are the economic realities of the situation that you find yourself in, and what are the best steps forward to improve upon the situation. And I find my role in those times, if someone's in a bad situation, is not to pretend that it's a good situation or maybe easily solvable if it's going to require some hard work. Just like a physician's job is not to tell someone that their health is great if it's not. It's not to be the best friend of my client. It's to be a professional advisor, just like you wouldn't tell someone that they're fine if their health isn't fine, and you'd come up with a treatment plan. And that's the same way, I approach it. And again, some of those discussions can be difficult, but there's always a solution. It might not be what they want to hear.
That's
but
I think most physicians listening would tell you, yep, right? Nobody wants to hear, I need to exercise and eat well and sleep.
Right.
Stop binge watching TV all night. Yep.
Like my kid, when he fell out of the tree and broke his wrist, he came over and I looked at it. I'm not a doctor. And I'm like, Max, your wrist is broken. She's like, I don't want it to be broken. I'm like, well, don't think it's your choice at this point, buddy. We're going to the emergency room.
I often wonder about my fellow physicians' inner voice. I've had a lot of time this year with some space and time to reflect. So when one is faced with financial decision that may conflict with their, reality, desire to spend or keep the same lifestyle versus address whatever their issues are, what do you hope our listeners will say to themselves to ask the right questions? These are high-functioning people, right? So sometimes you just have a visceral reaction. You actually know what the right thing is to do, but you don't want to, or you suppress it. So I don't know. How do we get folks to kind of listen to that gut, or as soon as something's wrong, get some professional guidance or help, or,
My first answer is hopefully by starting early enough, we don't get to that stage. I'm a huge believer in just automating savings, treating your retirement, treating college, treating your debt like a bill, and just automatically taking money so that the money that is sitting in your account can be spent on whatever you want to spend it on. And to micromanage that surplus, I don't care if people want to go to Starbucks every day and buy 2 coffees. If their big goals are taken care of, that's not how we fix problems. I know people like to use that analogy, but generally someone's world doesn't come down to 1 cup of coffee at Starbucks a day for $1,800 a year. It's usually much bigger, issues if they're a problem. So my answer to that, Julie, would be if they don't know where they are on the map at that point in time, then get some help. I mean, if it's like, well, I'd like to buy this car, I'd like to upgrade this house. Well, do you know what the ripple effect of that is? Do you even know where you are in relation to your other goals? What is most important to you? Because some people, and I would be guilty of this, I've got a financial plan that I'm executing on, and it looks good, but I still have anxiety about spending money on things that I don't need, but I want. Even though it won't impact my big goals, I still don't like to spend money. So money is a very multifaceted thing, logical or illogical.
It really is. And this year I've been humbled, look, not giving up my title, right? The salary, everything I work my whole life for so I can reclaim my health. And now my husband's looking for another job. I mean, this is real, right? And for a surgeon, I mean, come on, it's really devastating, right? But what's been the gift in all of it? Again, we're blessed, and we didn't have to give up the house, and we didn't have to, because thankfully I did all those things you mentioned along the way, right? But I will say small things, learning how to get by with less. I think I learned that when you make a certain amount, we all know this, you spend to whatever. Right. Recently I met someone, God, I would love to connect you. This gentleman is an expert in different than what you do, but he works with, let's say, elite athletes. And he built a platform where it makes it all visible. Because I think when people can't see it, you don't feel how much you're spending and swiping and putting on the credit card, right?
Right.
So when I saw this platform, it was amazing. It's transparent. But the one thing he said that I totally think is a parallel for physicians and medical students and trainees is he said to me, I have these young professional, you pick a sport, soccer player. They're making $2 million a year. They're 22, 23 years old. So to them, it's like, I'm good. Except they didn't realize they're spending $4 million a year, right? He's passionate, just like you are, to give them that information on the front, show them a graph that at this rate of expenditure, regardless of what you're currently making or what you think you're going to make 5 years from now, you are going to go broke at this time, at this age. And seeing that simple graph, the line graph, was very powerful. And I remember telling him, God, I wish we had this for trainees, right? Let me plot this out for you. Is your spouse going to be at home? Is your spouse also a professional? And also, I think 2 professional or a lot of physicians or dual physician marriages, right? So now you can say, hey, we got plenty of income. But I can see how then it's easy to overspend or not do these things that will protect them.
A simple analogy that just kind of a visual that I think is a good reference point for physicians, especially as they get further along, in their careers. And I talk about it with my children, and I say, an iceberg, I said, a very small portion of the iceberg actually sticks out above the water that you can see. I said, but they're very stable. It's really hard to tip over a big iceberg because there's so much underwater. And I said, that's the way that I want my clients' financial situations to be. That's the way I want our financial situation to be. Wealth can pop out in certain spots, but if all the wealth is on the surface for everybody to see and there's nothing below it, it's a very unstable situation. And that tends to lead to stress and anxiety, burnout. And so I think that's kind of a good visual for people if they're looking at their own situation. What's your iceberg look like?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I don't want to be the Titanic, that's for sure. Okay, so let's shift a little bit. When I am involved in conversations about burnout, well-being, we really care about the system, right? System-based issues. So can I shift and ask you, what do you think our audience should know about system and institutional strategies?
Sure. I think most physicians do a pretty good job of taking care of the basic ones, max funding the 401k plan, making sure at the minimum, even to begin with, if you got a bunch of debt, and make sure you're funding it at least up to the matching contribution. Maybe if you put in 6%, your employer gives you 3%. I mean, even if you have debt, it makes sense to do that and get that compound interest working for you. Make sure you're properly enrolled in, the life and disability, coverage. Some of them offer buy-up coverage, as well on the disability to buy up from $10,000 a month to $15,000 a month. In general, those are typically good things, to do, or at least, to review those options. Some missed things, I think, might be just some of the dependent care spending options and things like that to run like daycare costs, at least up to the IRS limit through that. So at least can turn some of your daycare costs pre-tax. But I know some physicians are just so busy, they don't necessarily enroll, in some of those, types of things. And
yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I made it a point when I was so engaged and involved trying to help busy doctors just realize, hey, it's open enrollment, right? All these hundreds of emails that, other people understand better about. It was very obvious to me that physicians will sacrifice every second of their time for patient care, right, in the name of their profession. And it's just so much easier to work harder than to take the time and go, what is that?
Right.
I don't understand it. And sometimes it's difficult. In their defense, I was very much vocal about where. I can't even navigate the employer website to figure out where the information is. And if it's not easy, and if I have to, search for it, I am not going to make 5 minutes to go through and figure out who I need to call. What am I doing? So I will say that I'm very grateful. For example, something small, the financial advisor we have, the relationship we've had for a decade, he comes to the house. He knows I'm not available between 8 and 5, and that personal quarterly review, understanding your numbers, right? You're right. You brought it up. It's like going to the doctor and knowing where your cholesterol is. How do you even start to have a plan to address your cholesterol if you don't even know? I'm somebody that if it's not in front of me, how much do I have in savings? What bucket? Where's the loan? Where's our mortgage now? What's going on? Right. So yeah. Okay. How about this question? Remember I said, no offense, financial advisors seem like a dime a dozen.
Right.
How do you look for a great one who is physician-centric? Okay. Not just because you think you're going to manage some future wealth we're going to have. I want to be clear. But really, are there certain credentials, expertise? Are there red flags that should tell you to run away? We actually had one horrible experience. And I can see why I've spoken to physicians who are afraid. They want to put their money in the mattress,
Unfortunately, to be a financial advisor, you can call yourself a financial advisor by passing a couple exams. There's not 4 years of medical school and residency and things that you have to be a physician. There are a lot of professional designations, CFP, CLU, CHFC. There's other ones, as well. Those are a couple big ones, that come to mind.
Certified financial planner. Oh, this is like for the doctors, the MD, FACS.
Those kinds of things. And I'm not going to endorse one over another. I think, and I know some very good advisors that don't have any initials, because a lot of what we learn, I'm a specialist, let's say in the medical and dental consulting side, but there's no exam for that. There's no certification.
It's all experience, isn't it?
It's just experience at thousands and thousands of meetings. And someone said to me the first time, my AR is $800,000. I'm like, oh, okay. Early on, I'm like, what's AR? I'm like, go back, accounts receivable. Okay, now I know what AR is. What someone starts talking about RVU, what's a relative value unit? Oh, okay. But there's no exam, for that kind of thing. So I think if, as a physician, you might just want to have some, I think a general conversation with a financial advisor will tell you if they know anything about a typical question, that I think if you're working with physicians, asset protection tends to be a concern. And, states like Florida, have good asset protection laws protecting retirees where other states don't. And if you're a financial advisor says, I work with physicians in the state of Minnesota or Iowa, and they specialize in, they should darn well know that asset protection in the event of a lawsuit is a concern for physicians and be intimately aware of what assets are protected and not protected. And if they don't know that, that would be a bit of a, well, did you just say you work with physicians, but you maybe don't?
No, that's a great point, because I went through, this was devastating for me, a litigation case, right? From 2013 to 16. I'm already living in Florida. The lawsuit originated in Missouri. And what you said completely resonates with me. Thank goodness, my decade spent in Kansas, it was mandated the physicians live on the Kansas state side, right? Because Kansas City is Kansas, Missouri. And that saved us. I was never going to lose my house. It was explained to me why. It was a protection. So
Correct.
You're right, is that a great financial advisor isn't just knowledgeable about money. They understand the impact of disability, life insurance, legal protection. That is what I hope our audience understands, right? Instead of feeling like all these people want to be a part of your life. You get messages, you get LinkedIn because, you're going to be a surgeon. You're going to have a certain level of income, right? And sometimes it's natural to feel a little bit untrusting because you don't know who the heck these people are that all of a sudden show interest in you.
And in a financial advisor, we clearly don't replace lawyers, nor do we breach into that
of course
space. And we always recommend people have good legal representation and get their estates squared away and contracts reviewed and, and those kinds of things as well. But it's just a holistic understanding of the concerns that physicians would have and being able to address those and refer the proper people to make sure that they're fully taken care of.
Yeah. And this is the basis of my physician coaching business that I launched, is finally realizing after enduring all kinds of stuff and experiences that have been, not all positive, right? I mean, as bad as near PTSD from litigation and what it does to you, right? For me, it's like, oh my goodness, I know we're not professional athletes and I'm not signing a 20 million contract with Nike, right? But at the same time, realizing, wow, we are very special group of people that are highly trained, and yet our function in society intersects with so many other expertise areas that we don't know, but we need them surrounding us. I call it bubble wrapping a physician, so that it's not about us as humans being perfect. It's the fact that we hurt too, and there's no reason for the sacrifices and how hard we work. We should be at such risk, and so do our families. And that's where I bet, man, your clients are lucky to have you. Okay, I'm going to shift a little bit. This I'm just asking because I want to know. Let's talk about divorce and impact of that, because I mentioned earlier whether a lot of physicians are dual physician marriages because they met in med school. I bet dentists too, probably, but that's double the debt, right? And even with two earners, I guess any tips and thoughts about, because if you're in trainings, you may be married or may not be or have a fiance, or how does financial well-being come into dealing with that?
There's no good way really to get divorced. I mean, it's just economically generally a pretty bad situation overall. And I've seen some divorces get very nasty where, they end up fighting over certain things and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees on top of splitting assets, and things. And so I just try to tell people to try to keep the controllable costs down, as much as possible. and know that you're not going to probably like the results of it in the end. Everyone's probably going to feel like they didn't get a good deal, and that's generally how divorces work. It doesn't matter the cause, how assets get divided. And so, the best thing is just not get divorced, but obviously divorces happen, and they happen pretty frequently. So we're dealing with this stuff on a very regular basis. I can't think of too many divorces that ended. I'm like, well, that was a really good financial situation for both, to end it. It's always going to be pretty painful, but the legal fees are the things that are a little bit controllable. And to an extent, understand what you're disagreeing on and the economics of it. And does it make sense to fight over it and maybe put some pride aside and save yourself some money? But I know that's easy for me to say, and I'm not the one in the middle of a heated divorce. So I don't pass any judgment on divorces. It's just,
Sure.
It's a reality of life, and it's never really a good thing. And if you're getting remarried, say you're getting remarried for a second time, prenuptial agreements and things obviously would be something we would recommend for practicing physicians who've been in just protecting some assets. And that gets into more the legal side of things and having a good lawyer, and again, so I'm not going to get into that.
You're right. There's a lot of suffering to go around for physicians, whether it's divorce, where they're no better protected than the rest of the population, right? And the rates are high. I want to come back to the trainees. That's where, you're passionate and trying to set them up. So in case some of our listeners are younger, not yet married, it's like, I don't need financial advisor now. I don't need that till I'm married or have a family. What would you say? Can people start, or should they start financial planning when they're single?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no guarantee that someone gets married and you're only responsible for yourself. So financial planning is pretty straightforward when you're younger. I get a lot, well, I don't need to talk with a professional because I've got a bunch of debt that I'm paying off, which maybe you're not investing a lot at that point in time. Maybe we're not building significant wealth. But do you understand the options for debt? Are you doing it in the proper order? What are you doing on the risk management side of things? Just because you're not married doesn't mean that in the event of a disability that your income isn't going to go down. And most people don't want to take a huge pay cut in the event that they can't work. So it's thinking about where do you want to be. So with disability policies, for example, we don't write large policies on residents. It's kind of like Lego blocks. You start with a chunk of coverage and then you can add a bunch of blocks later. And so you can start with a small policy and make it meaningfully bigger once income pops up. And those policies are going to be much less expensive than a full-fledged practicing partner policy or whatever it might be, because that's protecting a larger income. But with disability coverage, if your health changes, it can be really hard to get coverage. If you have a poor driving record, it can be hard to get coverage. There's a lot of things that life insurance is quite a bit easier to get than disability, but they'll exclude things in disability.
That is such an important topic. I'm so excited. I have to admit, I have an episode focused on disability coming up. Thank you for sharing that. As we're nearing the end of our episode, I want to ask you, because I think you and I both share this passion about standardizing, right? Where are the things that really can apply to all trainees? It doesn't matter what specialty you're in. We talk about that checklist concept. I'm curious, what do you recommend that training programs, or if you were working with a department, a group of residents or institutional support, like what should be done during residency year? Just what's on the basics that you recommend to a resident?
As a resident, we've got a checklist, that we have, and I think I've shared it with you. But in residency, it would include the simple things, just understanding your debt, trying to build some sort of an emergency reserve, just for in case something happens, you've got a little bit of cash on hand. It would include protecting your income, getting disability insurance, maybe an inexpensive term life policy. Maybe if a spouse is working or you've got a little extra cash flow, maybe funding a Roth IRA, which is a nice option, in residency. Typically, we're not real focused on saving a lot of money in residency. If you can come out in close to the same situation you went in, we'll call that a victory. And even that can be hard if the debt's, unsubsidized, accruing interest. In residency, you can only do so much because the income is so limited relative to the debt. And a $60,000 income with $300,000 of debt, there's just not enough money to really make big progress. We just want to limit the damage. Where the opportunities exist and where is it that transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where programs could do a little bit better job of just having some educational materials on how do you manage that transition from residency to practice. And as you're aware, I've published a couple of books, real life, financial planning for the medical professional, and I've done one for physician or for dentists as well. And
What is it called again, and where can our listeners find it?
the book is Real Life Financial Planning for the New Physician, and I co-authored it with another advisor, Todd Bramson, in our Madison office, who also works with a lot of physicians. And it's available on Amazon, but for the most part, I generally just hand it out, and to clients. It's almost like a full business card. Probably easiest to, just order them from my office, but.
Okay, I'm going to need a signed copy, by the way.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Okay.
It's about 120 pages and just designed for a good airplane ride. It's intentionally not super technical, kind of like listening to me today. It's analogies and examples. It's not, hard and fast data. I like to explain things in stories and pictures, not necessarily numbers. So
I can't thank you enough. This has been wonderful. Every time I speak with you, I learn something. So as you wrap up, I'm going to give you the last word. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like our listeners, the physicians, to know?
For those of you listening, the biggest advantage, I think, of talking with someone about finances is just taking action. The financial world operates in the important but non-urgent category, and our lives are just one emergency after another, from practice to home to picking a kid up to a concert to a vacation to a conference to whatever's going on to a wedding. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are going on, and so we're always going to be getting to these things. We try to help people actually take action on there, and it doesn't have to be me. Any financial advisor, it's like hiring a coach or a personal trainer. You're more likely to go to the gym if there's someone there waiting for you than not. And so with financial advice, because it operates in that important but non-urgent, having kind of that strategic coach to make you address the things that you've stated are important but are not urgent can really help you take those steps. And I think that's the role of a financial advisor more than anything, more than being a great person with money or investing or great at dealing with insurance. It's just helping people take action on things to further their chances of accomplishing their goals and aligning their money with their life. And in short, I tell people, we help you have the best life you can with the money you have. And that's going to be different, for everybody.
Marshall, that's fantastic. As I guest hosted a recent podcast about why physician coaching, your analogies have been fabulous. That's how I think, where the gap is, right? We've all been raised with mentors. There are people who they taught us how to operate. For me, they're teaching me about otolaryngology as a specialty. But frankly, when it comes to all these other incredibly critical domains of my profession, that's where I need coaches in all these other areas. So I love that. Well, thank you again for your time. And I hope our listeners have learned a great deal. And I know they can find you when they Google you and maybe look for your book. Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us today. You can find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, and Ghana. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter @_BackTable ENT. We love feedback. Please reach out to us for topics, ideas, speakers, or if you ever want to come on the show. And also, from a compliance standpoint, I will read the following: separate from the financial plan and an advisor's role as financial planner. An advisor may recommend the purchase of specific investment or insurance products and accounts. These product recommendations are not part of the financial plan, and clients are under no obligation to follow them. Marshall is a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Securian Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Securian Financial Services, Inc., member of FINRA, SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Gifford Financial is affiliated with North Star Resource Group. 5273446/DOFU, December 2022.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, direct message us at _BackTable ENT on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. BackTable ENT is hosted by Gopi Shah
and Ashley Agan.
Our audio team is led by Kieran Gannon, with support from
Josh McWhirter,
Aaron Bowles, Nick Shellcross,
and Ness Smith-Savadoff.
Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz, with support from
Taylor Spurgeon-Hess and Ivan Orgodzinsky.
Social media and PR by Chi Ding.
Administrative support provided by Jamila Kennebrew.
Thanks again for listening and see you next week.